song is alive everywhere. Yes, the song is alive everywhere. And you are the ones who get to give the pitch. For the song is alive everywhere. Hi, I'm Ken Miedema.
Hi, I'm Beverly Vandermolen.
And together, we'd like to, on behalf of all of us who are a part of the Interlude community, Abigail Hastings, our associate, Sid Davis and Matt Greer, our co-founders, we'd like to spend some time with you today, letting you know what Interlude has been doing and thanking you for your generous part in what we're trying to do in the world. So let's begin where Interlude began, with our 3-day retreat for church musicians. And this started 10 years ago now. And every summer we bring, 3 dozen or so people together in 2 retreats, one in Georgia and one in Michigan. These are retreats where church musicians who are often underpaid and overworked and serve our churches so humbly and with such skill and talent can get away from the rush and rumble of their lives, spend some time learning from peers, telling stories about their lives, learning from the wisdom of Paula D'Arcy, our wonderful teacher, eating good food, having time to relax and rest, and reimagine our life and work and be renewed. So we never finish a retreat without phone calls and emails saying, these retreats are a life-giving thing for me. We had one exercise this past year where we brought 2 people together. We bring people together in pairs. And we have them sit across from each other. And person A talks a while, and then person B listens. Person B talks and person A listens. 2 of these people that we had paired together were from radically different theological and cultural backgrounds. And they told their stories to each other. These are people who normally would never have communication with each other. And when the retreat was over, person A writes a letter to person B and says, I took you way out of your comfort zone, and you greeted me with understanding rather than certainty. That's the kind of thing that happens at these retreats. They are a chance to be with peers, to reimagine our work, and to get away for a time for spiritual renewal. We're dreaming some new retreats even as this video is being made. We're in touch with a group of people in New York. Last January, we sat on a cozy couch in a warm New York apartment on a very, very cold night with people who are part of the New York theater world. We're talking musicians, actors, choreographers, dancers, producers. And all of our conversation revolved around this question: how do we live our lives in the rush and craziness of the New York theater world? How do we find balance? How do we live out our faith? How do we raise our children? How do we find time for creativity? How do we find silence? We dreamed a retreat that would be like an interlude retreat, except we decided we'd call it intermission. So this coming January, we go back to New York to sit on that same cozy couch to try to make this dream become a reality and create a retreat for Broadway people. We're in touch with a major East Coast college campus. There's a mental health support group on that campus, and we're talking about creating some events where students can tell stories and use the power of storytelling and music to create a therapeutic venue where they can deal with the trauma of trying to live and work and study in the pressure cooker environment of a college campus where there have already been several campus-wide suicides. So you can see these retreats are really, really important. I think Beverly has a story to tell you about a phone call that we received after one of our retreats.
I received a phone call from a music director who had been through Interlude. He had come home from a trip and found out that he was cruelly fired from his position because the church wanted to go in a different direction. He called me and through his tears said, if it hadn't been for Interlude, I would not have been able to see this firing as a gift. At that point, I said to Ken, this is work that we need to continue. This is holy work.
Let's talk now about chapter 2 of the Interlude story. We're talking about the conferences that you have helped to fund and that you have helped us to be a part of in the last several years. Last January, we met with a group of songwriters, worship leaders, pastors, theologians, college professors around this question: how do we write songs for the 21st century church that remind us of our social responsibility, that help us in the task of racial reconciliation, and that help us to develop multicultural worship and to create communities that go over and around those walls that have made the Sunday morning 11 o'clock hour the most segregated hour in American society. We actually wrote some songs during that conference, which was sponsored by the Porter's Gate Project. This coming fall, we plan to do a similar conference led by the Hymn Society in North America, the Convergence Music Project, Music That Makes Community, Interlude, and other sponsoring organizations. You are helping to make these things happen. This conference will again focus on new music that has new metaphors and tells new stories and helps us to reframe the Christian gospel in some new ways that are relevant in our culture, in our time. You're helping to make this happen, and we want to thank you for that. Now, of all the conferences to which you have sent us, the most interesting perhaps is the Wild Goose Festival. So imagine 4,000 people pitching their tents in a huge campsite in North Carolina, listening to some of the most exciting, dynamic speakers in the Christian world today: Brian McLaren, Diana Butler Bass, Barbara Brown Taylor, talking about what the church of the 21st century needs to look like and how it can be more inclusive, how it can respect diversity. And then besides all those great speakers, you've got great bands being on the stage, you've got all kinds of music playing, you've got seminars going in some of the tents around the campsite. I wish you could all be at Wild Goose with us. My job at Wild Goose was to create short, improvised response songs to every plenary speaker.
Come on, everybody. Now loose your hands. Let's sing it. We need this is the time
for our united.
Everybody say it with my brother.
Right here, right now, in the morning sun.
Oh, yes.
And if you dare to be united, you may be hurt, but you will not run. You may be hurt, but you will not run.
Now, you and I know how powerful music can be to help put a sermon or a speech or a testimony right there into your brain, to bring the left and the right brains together. That was our job at Wild Goose, and you helped us do it, and I'm grateful. Let me mention chapter 3 of the Interlude story. This is the part that makes my eyes water. This is what we call our small but mighty church ministry.
What we say, Lord, Christ is free.
We started out doing small but mighty church weekends. In Greenville, Texas, an hour and a half from Dallas, a tiny church of 50 people wants to do a fundraiser and a food raiser for the local food pantry, but they say we're only a church of 50. We came along and said, you rent the local civic auditorium. We'll come and do a concert. We'll let all of our friends on Facebook and all of our friends in the Dallas Metroplex know about this event. We put 350 people in the Civic Auditorium and raised $1,300 and lots of food for the local ministries. And now this little church of 50 people is saying, watch us. We can do anything. A small church in Maine, just beginning with 9 people. And we came and did an event that brought a great big section of that small town together on a Saturday night to tell stories. You've been a part of all these small churches, and that has led to our international ministry. This past year, you helped us go to the country of Kenya, where we worked with a group called Luke 14 Ministries. Together, we gave away and configured 200 wheelchairs. We watched people crawl on their hands and knees for miles to the distribution center to get a wheelchair. We also visited 4 schools for the blind around Kenya. We wanted to bring music to these students. It was amazing to watch them get up and dance with utter abandon. They also hung around me and asked me questions like, can blind students go to college? Can blind students use computers? How do blind students get jobs in your country? We plan to go back to Kenya to visit those same schools, and this time we're going to bring several hundred white canes and, if all goes well, a licensed mobility instructor to help students learn how to become independent.
In Kenya, I was able to watch Scripture come alive as people came for wheelchairs and they had mud all over their bodies. The team would wash their feet and wash their hands. And then I saw a woman who was 90 years old who was put in a wheelchair and began to dance. Her mourning turned into dancing. And then other times we saw the recovery of sight to the blind as the doctor was able to put glasses on students. And as they could see, they were just mesmerized by the fact that they could see. And I was seeing Scripture over and over again come alive.
In December of 2018, your generosity sent us to the island of St. Thomas on the U.S. Virgin Islands to become a part of disaster relief. Those islands were torn apart by hurricanes in 2017, and we saw hundreds of houses where there are still tarpaulin on the roof and there are no walls. People made homeless suddenly by those disasters. People said to us, we work so hard to rebuild homes and to put our island back together. It's wonderful to have someone come and minister to us. We were so amazed by the strength and the resilience of people, and so delighted by what we got to do last year that we've gone back to St. Thomas this year to do some of the same work. We sang in a mental health facility with a group of teenagers who, some of whom had not been in their homes for months. And we heard them tell about their dreams and their hopes for their lives. I sang to them and we told stories together. I think this was a way of using my music therapy background. We sang in a nursing home where the buildings were devastated. The dormitory had been ripped to shreds. Beds were in the cafeteria. There was no air conditioning. The temperature was 95 degrees. And when we started to make music, people sang along with us. One woman began conducting the music. and a gentleman asked for some paper and began drawing pictures of people with guitars and pianos. We know the power of storytelling and the power of music to create a therapeutic environment, and we want to use that power to do good.
I have always dreamed about doing a big arena show with Ken, to tour the country with other artists, and he could take stories from the audience, etc., etc. Here in St. Thomas, we found ourselves in an adolescent ward in a psychiatric facility with 13 teenagers. We were told they would not respond to outside people and that Ken was invited to sing for them, but not to expect a response. When he asked them what their dreams and hopes for their lives were, they began to tell stories like a girl who had been in the facility because she had been violent with her family stood and said, "I dream that my mom will not be afraid of me anymore when I go home." In that moment, I realized this was our arena. This is where Ken was called to be, where we were called to be, to tell the stories of people who needed to be able to speak them. And it was another holy moment.
So there we are. Retreats, conferences, small churches. Beverly, I think you have a letter from one of our small churches. I'd like you to read a part of that, if you would.
Dear friends, oh my goodness, what an extravagant gift you recently gave our little congregation here in Wisconsin. Please let those who contribute funds to this important ministry know how profoundly your willingness to make yourself available to congregations such as ours, and how it has touched the lives of those in our community. I have been told, of course, that people were moved, inspired, and blown away not just by Ken's musical virtuosity and improvisational gifts, but that it made people feel proud that our church was able to offer something like this to our wider community. I really can't thank you enough for making this possible. I can only trust you know how much your generosity and friendship and ministry means to me and those I'm called to serve. God's grace and peace to you.
So here is where it all comes down, my friends. You have been generous to us in the years past. You have given of your resources to help us do this holy, holy work. We're inviting you to partner with us again in the year 2020. 2 conferences at least, 2 retreats for church musicians, maybe a retreat in New York for Broadway people, maybe an event on an Eastern college campus for students undergoing stress and trauma, a trip to St. Thomas, and who knows what else. But you'll be a part of this great work that is being done really sort of all over the world. I thank you in advance for your contribution. I thank you for being one of our partners. I know that you know how important this work is. I want to represent you both here and around the globe. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your prayers. Thank you for who you are.
Oh, the song is a road that leads back home. Yes, the song is a road that leads back home. And you are the ones who get to raise the signs. For the song is a road that leads back home. And you are the ones who get to give the pitch. For the song is alive every